Essentially what we're going to be doing today is a continuation of what we did yesterday. So I've actually got quite a bit of energy this week, it seems, and I'm able to stream more regularly than I'm used to. But we were getting into a pretty good rhythm yesterday, so I want to kind of continue that. Yeah, essentially yesterday we went through and did a continuation of the refined pass on the body, and then we were pretty close to the end. We've probably got like the last, I think it was 75 frames left. And so yeah, we'll do that last 75 frames on the body, and then we can start doing some face expressions, something a little bit more exciting. I'll probably need to go through and just tweak a couple of the other bits, like just revise some of the parts that we've done in previous streams, but that shouldn't take me very long. Yeah, we should be able to get onto some face stuff soon. And then once the face is in a decent place, we can do some more body connectivity in like polish, and then we'll polish up the face, and then we should be good to go. But before I start anything, I'll make sure we got a couple of viewers coming in, so just pop say hi in the chat, and yeah, we should be good then. I kind of left this very last minute in the announcement, so we may not get as many people joining us today, but you know, it's not a big deal. For whoever wants to join, they can join. Cool. Looks like we don't have many people joining us today. Hey Animation Mob, how's it going, man? Let me just push back to the bit where we left off yesterday. Ooh, we have some controls going on there, which I don't want to see. Let's just do this. Good to hear, man. Yeah, I'm good. Been a pretty laid-back day. Not much going on at work at this very moment. So it's been nice to kind of have a more laid-back approach. Still cool to see what's going on in reviews and everything. I had a little booking with a tattoo consultant this afternoon, which was cool. This is back in London for when I visit at Christmas. And the guy seems pretty into doing it, so yeah, exciting times. I've been meaning to get more tattoos for ages, but because of COVID and everything, it's kind of been pushed back, which is a bit shit, but that's the least of our worries in that regard, so yeah. Hey Lucio, how's it going, man? I should be getting my final for my character I shared with you on LinkedIn. Oh, nice, man. Very cool. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Yeah, I was just talking to Animation Mob about some tattoos that I've booked in. How many tattoos? I only have the one currently, but it takes up like the entirety of my left calf, and I want to do essentially a leg sleeve. That's the plan in the long run. So I've pitched the entire leg sleeve to the artist, and he seems really on board. But he's very high in demand, so it's going to take a while. And of course I've got to be back in the UK for that. So I'd like to get it all done by the same person. I'm in no rush, but I think I'm trying to think how many pieces it's in. Like, it'll make up one sleeve, but in terms of like how many elements there are, I'm trying to think now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe like 7 pieces, something like that. Like 7 elements that make up an entire sleeve. I finished yesterday's stream and loved it. Can't wait to see what you do tonight. Awesome, man. Yeah, glad you enjoyed it. It's like, I don't know, it's difficult because with these kinds of shots, I don't know how much I enjoy this part of the process. This part gets quite tedious, so I'm surprised that people are sticking around to watch it, if I'm honest. But if it helps, it helps, you know? Like, it's cool just to, like, chat with the community. I'm essentially just animating as I usually would, but get to chat with you guys and explain a little bit as we go through. But yeah, like, with these kinds of shots, the more exciting part for me is, like, the early part of the process where I'm, like, figuring out the subtext and the acting side of things. And then, like, I enjoy doing some of the facial expressions, the lip sync and, like, the polish and that kind of thing. But, like, in terms of these shots where the body is very much sitting in one pose for the most part, especially for something this long, it can get quite tedious, especially as a, like, witness, you know, as a third person kind of sitting watching it. So yeah, it's cool that you're watching it though and you're enjoying it. So I'm just going to jump in. There was something that I saw in the play blast yesterday where it felt like the Z rotation on the neck felt too much here. So I'm just going to take that back a bit in here. It's amazing seeing this kind of work. When I went to animation school almost 20 years ago, there was no Twitter community. I love this stuff. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, I haven't even been in the community, like, I haven't been in the industry that long, but I've already seen the difference. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, it feels better. Yeah, I definitely feel that though. Like, there's a lot of different sources out there now, and it's cool, like, that people have started to use this, like, platform a bit more. In the last, like, month, I've seen quite a few new streams, like, streaming channels coming up. I saw that Josh Sobel has started his own stream, which is really cool because he's, like, huge in industry. And then there's a new one called the Channel Box where they do animation feedback and interviews with other industry professionals, which is really cool. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff coming out. Cool. So what I want to do in here is I need to fix up the shoulder because that was popping before. So I'm just going through all these keys and blending them back. There you go. Just fix that. That's not what I wanted. Cool. So this is where we got up to. Now we just got to do this part. Wouldn't be funny at all. And between these two keys here is like a huge spacing. And I was very aware of that every time I saw the play blasts, but I was getting around to it. So that's probably the biggest part we need to fix up. But that shouldn't be too difficult. I'm just going to turn down the volume on the music. It's a bit high for me. Can't concentrate too much. Cool, so I just want to see if there's anything in my reference, because in here I also... Oh yeah, there's a subtle double blink in there where I slightly ease in and then stick for a second. But the body is pretty linear going through there. So I'm just going to have a look at the root, see what the root is doing in the curves. When do you think you'll be done with this shot, and how far along has your friend come with her shot? So it's the same shot, just to clarify. Where my reference is currently staged, that's where her character is. She's still in blocking because she's going through her studies. But yeah, like she's slowly getting there. I think I'm just kind of plowing through as much as I can while I've got the time, because it may get really busy at work and I may have to slow down how much it takes. But in terms of actually my side of completing it, I reckon we're on part 4 now. I reckon maybe by part 7, maybe 8, I could have had it by final, like where I'm happy with it. But I reckon, I don't know, it's hard to tell honestly, because each shot requires something a little different, and this is a fairly long shot as it goes. I mean, it's not massively long, like when I usually consider shots that are longer like 16 seconds plus, but like this is 12-ish, I think. Isn't it? How long is it? 275 frames is 11 seconds, right? I think. Doing my maths now. Yeah, it should be 11 seconds. So it's not massively long, but in terms of like, there's still a lot of frames to clean up and polish. Luckily, there's not much lip sync in that, so there's a little less cleanup to do there. It's only in the last like, I don't know, 50 frames that there's actually like big lip sync. So we can definitely clean that up a lot and just really polish that stuff. But I think overall, it's mostly going to be like all the little connections in the body with the forearm. So right now, all the weight is near, like slightly behind the wrist. And so doing a connection for that is going to be kind of tricky. But yeah, I haven't exactly decided how I'm going to figure that out yet. But we'll play it by ear. But yeah, I reckon 7 or 8 parts we'll probably have this finished. Right. So I want to make sure that before we do anything else, just blending those keys, because we also adjusted the body slightly. So now when I have a look at the root, let's see what the root's doing in the X. So the X comes up here, but I want to ease that out slightly softer and have it punch later. So it begins to ease out around there and then cushion in, but I think it should be a bit softer. So in here, I'm going to make sure these are all easing out. And then here, up to this point, I want to just cushion these in a little bit more. And I reckon from around here, we can even smooth that out a little bit so it's not punching so much. Yeah, that feels a bit better. Then on the Y, there's the turn. The turn can be delayed here. Just a tad. And then the Z. Again, it's kind of punching right now. It should lead, in this situation from the upper body. It should lead, and then the upper chest should offset behind slightly in the twist. But I don't want it to be loads, so it's going to be quite subtle. So I'm just seeing what the influence is. Yeah, I do want to ease it out a little bit more. Something like that. So that already feels like it has a bit more cushioning to it, which feels a bit nicer. I was actually having this conversation earlier with a different student that I'm talking about, where in terms of, if you're going for something that's if you want to go something that's more realistic, that shouldn't mean that your spacing should feel slower. I think that's a difference, at least when it comes to humans. Animals is slightly different because it depends on their weight, but with a human, in terms of if you want to go for something more organic, some people think, oh, okay, so I should give it more time to do things. And there is some element of that, but it's also, your spacing shouldn't change, maybe just your timing. So it shouldn't be as fast to go into things. But what I mean by your spacing doesn't change too much, some people think that if I wanted to bring my hand over, if it was going to be super cartoony, you could hit into it. But I think the difference is when you're doing something more natural, you're spacing, the general broader stroke of the movement shouldn't change too much, but rather how much you cushion into it should. And that's what kind of makes it feel a little heavier, because it takes a little longer to settle. And that's essentially how I'm treating this shot, is like it still punches into these actions, but when it drags, like it slightly drags and cushions a little softer as it gets like to the last 90% of the pose. And it just takes like an extra, say usually in cartoony animation you could probably settle into, like from the 90% ease in, you could probably settle in the next frame, or like 2 or 3 frames later. But when you've got something that's slightly more realistic or something more organic, I tend to ease in over like another 10 frames just to give it a little bit more cushion, and it also helps with like moving holds. So that's kind of my mentality when I'm looking at spacing, when I'm changing these curves. I'm kind of selecting this kind of bracket here where I'm saying, okay, there's about 10 frames there, roughly, just over, I think. Or is that 10? Yeah, there's coincidentally 10 frames there when I was cushioning. So now let's have a look at the upper body. So here we have an actual change in the base of the root on the Y. You can see in here, oh, it's super subtle. I'm not even going to change that. It's literally like pixels. There's a little bit in the Z, so I'll change the Z one. I'm just going to cushion this out a bit. Then there's going to be a lot more in the Z and the X and everything in here. So he kind of leans up now, but I do want to get, there's no change in the upper, in the middle section of the spine, and I would like to change that. So in here, I just want to get a little bit of compression. I'm doing the little shark fin curve that I mentioned earlier. So we're punching in there and then we easing back out. But that's the little shark fin curve that I mentioned if I hit the spline. There you go, you can see the shark fin. Just get a little bit of connectivity in there. And then on the Y, so I want to slightly offset this. This is punching way too early right now. So I'm going to get the time offsetter and I'm just going to bump this back. Let's see how that feels. Somewhere in here, and then I'm going to cushion into there. And then the Z, a similar thing. I think in here, I don't want to offset it too much. Like, I don't want to add too much cushion. So I'm just going to keep it relatively similar to what I have there. Just clean up some of the curves in the tangent. And then in the Y, let's have a look at the X. I always tend to just go down the chain, so X, Y, Z. So in the upper, I coincidentally have that same shark fin. Oh no, I hadn't selected a different control. Like an idiot. Ignore that. So in here, I want to get a bit of connectivity again. So we're going to get a bit of compression coming down. And again, I think we can have that shark fin, but instead, I'm going to cushion it a little bit more. And I'm going to have it hang for a little longer before it settles back. And then that should give us a little bit of offset in timing. Do you see that? It just slightly feels like it follows through the upper chest later. It's a subtle difference, but when I'm flicking through the frames, I can see the spine rolling off of itself rather than all going as one unit. And it's only by like a frame, like frame or two, that we're offsetting. And naturally, when you lean with your spine, it does go pretty one-to-one. If I lean forward, like your spine doesn't have too much of an offset from it. It does generally go as fairly as a unit, but we do want to get a little bit of offset in there just to break up the body so it doesn't feel too rigid. So we can take some creative liberties when we're animating. So in here, again, I want to offset this animation by probably about 4 frames, maybe even 6. Let's see how that feels with 6. Yeah, that feels too much. So we'll go back to the 4. And then I'm going to smooth out the curve a little bit, just give it a little bit more ease in and out. There we go. So now it feels like the body slightly trails behind. So there's a little bit of lead from the head and the hips. Now we need to look at the Z again. I'm going to try offsetting this from the middle. So again, just going to delay it by 2 frames and see how that feels. And then I'm just going to, again, soften these curves a little bit. If you guys have any more questions, do let me know. It doesn't have to be regarding this, because I know this is pretty tedious to watch and there's not a whole lot to necessarily ask. It's all kind of just logical stuff right now. But if there are any questions that you guys have regarding different things, I'm curious to know. Give me your hardest questions. Maybe things that you've learned. If there's like a really cool tip or trick that you've learned from someone else that maybe you could challenge me to ask me if I know the answer, or you could just teach me, that'd be even better. You know, I'm curious to learn as well. Right, so that's all good. The neck in the X. Let's see what's happening here. So in here, I want to lead a bit earlier. So I'm going to ease out here, then begin to ease in around there. I think I do want it to raise a little bit more. Right now, I think this dips too much. I'm thinking now. So I want it... I like this height, and I want it to come down. And then it should raise up. But it begins to go the opposite way. So... maybe we try something like this. I think in here, I need to continue the arc going down a little bit. Yeah, something around there. And cushion in. And then I'm going to have to offset these a little bit. There we go. I think I need to, I want to smooth out the neck there as well. Just make it a little bit more linear coming up. Just as a bit, there you go. It feels like there's a slight more separation in the neck from the chest. That's what I was looking for. Again, we're going to ignore the rotate Y. And the Z. In here, I think we can ease out a little bit more. Your Spider-Man shot really put you in another category of animation. Where did the inspiration come from? And where did you learn to do all the extra stuff and lighting and texture and so on? That's a good question. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's really cool that you've kind of acknowledged it that way. It was honestly a fluke. It was a lot of good timing. I mean, I'm not going to say that I didn't put time and effort into making it as good as I could, because I definitely did. The inspiration came from the teaser trailer. So I can't remember when they released the teaser. So the official trailer hadn't come out yet, but the teaser trailer for Spider-Verse had, and then there was like a 3-4 month gap where they hadn't released anything else, and so I just essentially took the concept art and everything from that and kind of used that as inspiration. I might even be able to find some of it for you. So in terms of the lighting and all that kind of skill, like those, like I wouldn't say I'm particularly competent in those areas. I kind of wing it, but I do a lot of digital painting, and I did do like the lighting on our major projects when I was at university, and like all the comp and that kind of thing. So I have some level of like, I guess some level of skill there, but I wouldn't say it's particularly crazy. So, oh, here we go. I'm just finding stuff. So here I have some of the concept, like here's some of the screenshots that came from the movie, the teaser trailer. And I literally just color picked the different color palettes that they were using for those shots. And then kind of picked one that I thought works nicely. You can see the original kind of colors there. And picked a kind of grading that I thought works nicely for what I was looking for. I think I kind of went somewhere in this realm. It was like these kind of colors. And so essentially, I was also looking at the values in terms of lighting, like the darks and lights. That's why I have the grays there. And then this is actually, so this method came from like looking at Pixar color scripts and how they would take renders and paint over them. And so this was some of the early renders that I made, literally just out of Arnold, of the scene as my template. So I didn't want to have to redraw every single part just for efficiency, because it's going to take a long time to paint over it anyway. So once animation was final, I just took some key stills that I thought were like beats where I needed to establish some change in lighting. And then this was the black and white version. So I was looking and studying those values. So you can see there. Let's just zoom in a bit more. Yeah, so I painted, this is just in Photoshop. I painted over the top of those and established like some lighting keys. And then I did the color pass, which was here. That's not what I wanted. Oh, there we go. So essentially with that black and white value, I went back over with an overlay and like overlaid color into it essentially. And these were the final color keys. I didn't hit exactly the same colors, but they were pretty close. And then this is when the explosion goes off in like Miles' world, and then I wanted to have that flash card, so there was some color stuff in here. I studied a bit of color theory as well to try and find some complementary and tertiary colors that I could use. So I wanted to have this pink. That was something that I really wanted in there. And then the other colors I kind of let I found there's this website which kind of calculates different colors for you that could complement the color that you picked, which is really cool. And so that kind of helps with that. And then, yeah, some of the other keys. What else do I have? Yeah, just seeing if there's anything else in here. I mean, yeah, you said you were talking about, and then texturing, I mean, that was looking at the original stills from the trailer and kind of trying to simplify those textures. I think I have some of the textures somewhere. Yeah, you watched the making of video. Oh, thanks. Thanks so much, man. That means a lot. But I have some of the textures here so I can show you. So there are some things in here that maybe people didn't see. They're little Easter eggs. Some of them are more obvious than others. So I also got Peter Parker, and I thought Parker sounded like a set of shoes. So here are some of the textures, and these are super rudimentary. But yeah, it kind of has that like Spider-Verse-esque like hatching kind of going in there. I mean, I wasn't being like, they were way more specific on the actual movie, but this was just enough to sell the aesthetic. I wasn't trying to go for something like perfect. What was this for? Okay, so this is just for like windows and buildings. Then you got the Avengers Tower. So you can see how like simple I went with some of it, where I was just trying to add in like little highlights on the windows and stuff. How many miles will you Morales? This one kind of got lost. It's in the very background in the first like still of the piece, and it kind of got blurred out, but I did add this in there. I was just trying to think of stupid slogans. Yeah, these were just different textures. So this was a pretty prominent one that was in the background. So again, I was studying a lot of how they use different cross-hatching. I loved this, like this kind of style. It was so fun to do. I love like very rudimentary graphic abstract shapes. And so it was really fun to kind of paint these. And this is like different alpha channels. And then I used, these essentially were like, because the thing that I'm not very competent in is shading and how to rewrite shaders. So I was using a lot of shaders and just like plugging in transparency here and there for like Maya and Arnold shaders. And so in order to kind of get what I was looking for, and to get that cross-hatching look to feel somewhat consistent with the aesthetic of the movie, I essentially just got different like textures of like cards. So you can see the different like patterns of different cross-hatching and dots. I use this one quite a lot too. This is actually a Photoshop brush set that I found online. It's literally just called like dots and like cross-hatching. And I use those on different cards. I literally put them on image planes in Maya and then put them on top of where I wanted the lighting to sit, and then rendered those dots out as a separate alpha channel and then comped them back into the shot later. So I was using a lot of like After Effects, that kind of thing. So yeah, there was a thing called here, which I just called Lee, obviously Stan Lee, and then Thor's hammer. That was in one of the buildings. I think there's one, yeah, there's a Fisk Tower. Gob Hob was one that was in the foreground. And there's an MJ thing. Oscorp, which was in the front. So there's quite a lot of references. I like the Spider-Ham one. See if I can find it. So I actually slipped in my AJB logo in the very background. I don't know if you can see it in the final shot, but it is there. Road. This is all for like the water, like specular water puddles, just going down the road. Yeah, obviously the spider logo. This is a Spider-Ham one. Very literal, but yeah. I'm going to rewatch and try and catch all of these. Yeah, we'll have to find it. This is obviously the Green Goblin. Yeah, those are all the textures. I'm curious if you can see them now. I know we're diverging from the shot that we're doing at the moment, but I'm kind of curious to see if I can find it. So I've got the final shot here somewhere. Here we go. So, you can't see it, but essentially it's so blown out. But essentially right here, I can't draw over it, but right here was the AJB logo that I added. And then this was the square which said how many miles can you Morales. But when I was in comp, I just completely overexposed it. And then like for the little depth of field feeling, you can see where like some of the red bleeds over the silhouettes of buildings and stuff. And the way I did that was I literally just got a grayscale version of the scene of the beauty pass. Then I literally put a red fill over the top, and then a separate one for the more like teal color. And I literally overlaid them on top of the entire scene, and then just shifted the entire comp by like a few pixels to the left and a few pixels to the right. And then I put a mask over that, using a Z-depth pass, so that it only showed in the background. But yeah, that's where the Miles Morales thing was. You got my AJB logo was there. Then you got the Oscorp on the left side. Was there anything else? Then you got the Parker's thing. Then there's the Green Goblin. I think the Gob Hob, you may not see it. Oh, there it is. Gob Hob on the right. Then there's the MJ on the left. Then there's the Lee Tower on the right there. And then you can see Spider-Ham down here. And then the bottom right, you've got the Spider-Man PS4 symbol, sorry. Then you got the Fisk there on the right. So I did deliberately stage these in a way that you could read them as you scrub through. But yeah, you can see the overlay very clearly here with the green and the red. Like, it's more like magenta. Kind of pushing either left and right to give it that feel. Then you got the pop art splash stuff. Yeah, I think that was everything. And then you got the Avengers Tower at the back. Yeah, it was fun to do, man. I did really enjoy doing that shot. Took a long time. I think I was doing it most evenings for like 3 months, but it was only like, most of it was in lighting and comp and all the texturing stuff. The animation took like 2 weeks, something like that. And it wasn't like full day 2 weeks either. It was like an hour here or there, maybe an hour or two once a day. So we're talking about, there's 14 days worth. So we're talking about 25, 26 hours was how long it took to like animate the shot. I actually wanted to do it as a lighting piece rather than an animation piece, and ironically, it got me a job at Sony. Like, don't get me wrong, I put thought into animating the shot. I couldn't just, as an animator, I couldn't leave it half-assed. But at the same time, I wasn't like super fixating on every single frame. It was more just getting the feeling right and making sure I had good poses. I would hope this landed you a job in the next Spider-Verse. Well, I'm at Sony, so I'll let you interpret that as you will. So let's get back to the shot at hand. So did I ease out on the neck here in the Z? It just want to get a little bit more in there, just to have a tiny ease out. So it eases out there. Why is it sticking? There's something going on there, but I can't tell if it's the neck. I think the neck in the X needs to ease out earlier. Yeah, let's soften that a little bit. That feels a bit better. And then I'm just looking at the Z. That actually feels okay. I don't want to overshoot it or anything. If I do want to overshoot it, I'm just going to put like, let's add a tiny bit. Can you put a gizmo in rotation so it's a little clear to understand, please? Put the gizmo in rotation. Oh, sorry. Yeah, of course. There you go. That's a good tip, thank you. It's funny because I never look at that too much when I'm looking for the rotations. I'm more looking at the curves. I look at the graph editor so much now, and then just see how that translates in the viewport, but I'm never looking at like the actual rotation on the gizmo. So we'll have a little overshoot there, and then we're going to settle back in, but it's going to be quite subtle. Oh, that's so subtle. So it comes around in here. I think we can push that a little bit more. Somewhere into there. Yeah, there's a tiny bit in there now. We're getting into like polished territory there. Cool. So now we're gonna look at the head. So I don't want to add too much X rotation. I'm also thinking I may actually just take down some of the X curves. So I'm going to grab all of the... So it's in this breakdown here. I feel like we're going too much down in the X, just overall. So I'm going to grab all these curves at this point, and I'm going to scale them back to this key. So they're going to scale to the right. And then I'm just going to blend these back a little bit. There we go. I just didn't feel like there was too much going on. And I didn't think it was necessary. It's just a head turn, you know, with a tiny bit of twist in there. I think I was over-calculating it. So now, having a look at the head, what's the head doing in the X? It would be nice to lead it a little earlier. See how that feels. Yeah, I kind of like that. I do want to continue the ease out. I kind of like it too. Thanks, Danish. Welcome for thanks for joining us. Welcome for joining. Doesn't make any sense, does it? One thing that you'll notice, and I'm actually really bad at this on Twitter as well, for those who follow me on there, is I don't check when I type things. I just type away on my phone and don't proofread, and I send it. I'm like, oh my god, my grammar. Oh. And that happens with my speech as well. My brain thinks way too fast. Yeah, it's a little embarrassing when I proofread it again. I do know that I make those mistakes, and then I look at it later. I'm like, oh, Arran, come on. Do you have bad handwriting too? I was known. I think it's got worse over the years, in a weird way. But at school, at least, I was known for having what kids in my class refer to as girly handwriting, because it had it wasn't. What I think what they mean by that is it is a lot more neat than most guys. Most guys' handwriting, as a generalization, is quite scruffy, but mine was very articulated, you could say. It was very clean. So I think my handwriting isn't particularly bad, although I've got a lot more careless with it over. Yeah, I prefer the term artistic. But yeah, I've got a lot more careless with it over the years. But I wouldn't say it's particularly bad. So I'm going to cushion in here. I want to see how much I can get away with overlap on the head, but I don't want to do too much. I think I can still drag the neck a little bit more in here. Yeah. I'm just going to hang this for a little longer in the neck. Have that cushion in. It's tricky. because it's a fairly direct action, but I don't want to feel like the head doesn't have any arc in there. So I do want to add some. There it feels like it begins to drag. So I think we need to favor into that key. Something like this. And then I think we can go a bit more linear into there. There you go. That feels kind of nice. I think in here we can maybe drag it a bit earlier. See how this feels. Just a tad. It looks like the nose hits a bit of a wall going screen right. Yeah, it does. I need to clean that up too. But thanks for noticing it. Yeah, totally. I think I was trying to get a little bit of like this. If you look at my reference, there's a hesitation. It's very subtle, but in here, can you see the spacing here to then here, slightly bigger? So there's a slight process and then he goes to the right. And I was going to see if I could add that texture and see if I can make that feel right. But right now it's too much. But yeah, I am going to blend that out. I don't want it to be a complete, I almost want there to be a little bit of texture. So that's actually what we're going to do now, because I've just had a look at the X and the X feels pretty good. Let's go a bit closer. Yeah, the X feels fine there. And then, so yeah, you can see I'm starting to favor in here. So I actually want to look at my reference here just to get a feeling for what the reference actually does, and then I'll probably end up blending it back through. So there's a slight ease out here. And then it favors in here. Something like this, and then punches back out again. This is the kind of spacing my reference has. But I want to kind of soften that out and see how I can get that to feel. I want to keep, so essentially I just want to make it a little bit more linear for these two keys, and then it can begin to favor back in again. And I want to see how I can get that to feel. Once I add the face expressions to connect to that, I think it's going to help it a lot. Without that, it's going to feel a bit weird right now, but we're going to do a pass on that soon. So I think in here I want to lead with the Z. Right now I'm dragging. And it'd be nice to have a bit of lead in here. So we're going to go the opposite way. So we're leading around. And then we're going to ease out. And then it needs to ease in at this point. There we go. I'm going to cushion that out a little bit. I feel like it's over pronounced now. It's again subtle different change, like subtle adjustments, but it makes a difference. And I think in here I also want to ease that out. Something in there. Now, I'm thinking, do I want to overshoot the Y? I might want to have a little bit of overshoot in there. So I'm pulling this up. And then I'm gonna cushion this back in. just because it felt a little bit stiff, but I don't want to go too much. That still feels too much. It's funny because as we're adjusting things, we're pretty much getting back to what we had, but it's only a subtle amount. I think that helps. I'm feeling like there might be a bit too much separation on the head leading to the turn and the rest of the body. You had mentioned before that this is a workflow you have always used. May I ask if this workflow that you used at Sony? It depends on the shots. So when I'm doing acting stuff at Sony recently, yes, I've been using this exact same workflow, but the style is very different from this. And so in terms of how I'm using these keys and making these adjustments in the graph editor is very different. Have I always used this workflow? No. I think doing this part of the process is something that I've only started to use since I moved into feature. So I would say I started to develop, I mean for myself. Obviously other people have used this method before. But for myself, I started to make this adaptation, I guess you could say, a year and a half ago, maybe in between that time, 2 years ago. Around the time I'd finished working on the How to Train Your Dragon special and moving on to Spirit Untamed, it was around that time I started to make the spline bake thing, because I was trying to find ways that I could utilize the tool set in Animbot in favor of the workflow that I already was using. I didn't want to have to readjust my workflow too much and my mentality, but this still gave me a bit more control. So yeah, without Animbot, I wouldn't use this method. I mean, you could. I'll tell you how. I bet a lot of animators probably use this before Animbot or just other techniques, but essentially, if I wanted to create a new curve, let's say I got these keys here. If I wanted to create a new, if I wanted to create an overshoot and I had a key here, before Animbot, I would literally just do this, and I would forge my own ease in and out to get that kind of curve, and it works. It was just a lot more manual. So this speeds up the process. So it definitely made my mindset. You use Animbot at Sony. That's a controversial. We have A-tools. There's controversy inside the company as to why we can't, but I won't go into that. But I use A-tools, which has the same functionality for this stuff. Licensing, woohoo! Yes and no. There was a partnership with the person who developed Animbot and A-tools. Used to work at Sony, and he was developing it for Sony, and then he wanted to go, as far as I'm aware how this works, he essentially wanted to go singular. He wanted to promote it like he's doing now, and Sony said no, so he essentially had to using completely different code, had to rewrite Animbot and then rebrand it and make it in a separate thing. But he still promotes A-tools online, but it's free, as far as I'm aware. So, but yes, technically Sony have some of the royalties towards Animbot, A-tools, sorry, as far as I'm aware, which is maybe one of the reasons it's free. I don't know. I don't want to go too much into the politics of it. This is just what I've heard. But this is way before I moved to Sony. So there's something with the connection in the body in here, it feels a little late. So I want to ease some of this out. Maybe a bit earlier. So I'm going to see how it feels. So I'm going to grab the keys from this moment here to here, and I'm going to push these 2 frames earlier. Feels a little better in the upper. I'm going to ease these out a little bit. I think that helps. Maybe I've just made it worse. When I was working on Spirit Untamed, I did use Animate because I have my own license. So obviously, you can see here. So like when I'm using stuff at home or stuff where it's not as controversial in the company, then I would be using Animate, as long as the company allow you to, you know. Cool. So I think up to this point, I'm pretty happy with the body. I do want to look into cleaning up. Did you buy it or monthly? I pay monthly, and I got the eco version. I didn't like. It's nice to have the maintenance and stuff, but for what I need on a daily basis, I'm not too concerned with updates as long as it's functionable, which it is. I haven't had any bugs or anything go wrong or crashes or anything. So like, yeah, eco had everything I needed, and I just pay monthly. But there are people who probably utilize a lot more of its toolset. It's quite sad because there's so much great functionality that they've implemented in here, but I only use like 10% of it. And there is going to be that one time where I need to use something and it's going to be super useful to know how to use it. And I'm probably going to need that soon for this shot in particular. So we will go into that later. But for right now, I don't use that much of the toolset that Animate has. And that's just me being a little bit ignorant. So in here, I want to cushion the wrist. I'm just working on the wrist here. And then I want to have it so it kind of rolls off. And I think we can exaggerate that roll off a little bit more. So it's cushioning in still. Just a little bit of cushioning. Something like that. Yeah, that feels right. I'm just trying to get a little bit of like, imagine this is the palm. I'm essentially trying to get this feeling so it leads with the rotation and then comes up and then it kind of holds for a little bit. Maybe even drags it so it begins to come down, and then as it makes contact on the side of the knee, then it rolls into it again. Yeah, it feels like there's too much, like you'll need a course. Yeah, it's true. And there are actually YouTube channels out there which are breaking them down and then you like explaining how you can use them specifically, which is really good. I haven't actually checked out the videos myself, like to like any crazy extent, but it's definitely on my to-do list. When I feel like I really need something, I'm like, I wonder if Animate has this. I'll look into those tutorials. See if it covers them. I think on the shoulder here. Yeah, it's doing some weird stuff. So let's have a look. It's gonna be on the Y, I believe. So in the Y, it comes back, but the arm is coming forward. So yeah, if anything, it's gonna do the opposite. So this is where I'm thinking about anatomically. If I have my hand closer to me and then it goes further away, my shoulder needs to connect with that. So it's actually going to come forward. And not only that, he was leaning in with his hands close to him. And then his body comes up and his hands come away. So if anything, the shoulder is going to be the middle connection between that. And right now, you can see the curve is actually going away. So I actually need to do the opposite. And it needs to come in. And I'll make the adjustments however necessary after. So now we're going to cushion this in. So that's what I had before. And can you see how much that feels like it connects more now? I can adjust in the Z as well after. But I'm just trying to get that initial change correct. So this is where, when I've been blocking, I haven't considered the relationship between the the shoulder as much. And so, yeah, we're reworking that now. And then I don't think it needs to come down as much. So somewhere in this realm. So it's going to bring that all to favor in. Something like that. There you go. And now the shoulder just feels more connected. And then we'll do the same on the other one, on the other hand. It's so... I don't know if some of you guys have the same experience where when you start working from home and all your hotkeys and not necessarily hotkeys, but some of the buttons are going to change depending what studio you work at and how their pipeline is set up, or there's a different tool set that you use at work. And so you have slightly different key bindings. And I find myself switching a lot. So I've still got a UK keyboard, but obviously all the keys are bound in Canadian at work. And so I adjust to the way I use Maya at work. But then when I go back to using rudimentary Maya, I start pressing the wrong keys. I'm like, no, don't do that. So yeah, I'm kind of constantly having to readjust my mindset when I'm working at home or working at work. Thinking here, I want to lift some of the weight on the wrist and have the wrist settle back down. Just to give it a little bit of weight, and then I'll probably relax the fingers later. That feels about right. And then the pressure on the hand here as it comes down is a little early. That feels about right there. Something in that area. I want it to be subtle, just little connections. And then as the wrist comes round, again, I need to see what curve is happening on the shoulders. Is it coming back or is it coming forward? It's going back, for God's sake. So it needs to actually come around this way. So this is going to ease out. And then here it's going to ease in. So I actually did the opposite of what I should on the shoulders. So I'm just making that adjustment now. And then shoulders need to come up to correct to that. And the thing is, if you look at the difference, it actually feels a little bit more graphic. I like how straight the arm comes down here. I may slightly tweak the elbow in, just to, so we can read the forearm a little bit in terms of the pose, but I actually kind of like the connection and generally the feeling of the pose a bit better this way. So sometimes you make happy accidents just by doing connectivity. Cool. So now we've got the shoulder working. And then I want to make a slight adjustment to the elbow. So it's around here. It's going to be split the difference, I think. I'm going to have to bring this hand more screen right. So let's see if we can make that adjustment. Is it that way? Yes, that way. So we're going to take these curves here. I'm just going to bring it up slightly so it goes away. And then I want to make an adjustment on the rotate Z on the hand, just so it's not completely overlapping. Around there. So I'm just pulling these in scale. And then we just get a little bit more of a read on the forearm, separated from the upper arm. I didn't want to completely take that away. Just this right angle. And now I'm actually going to cheat the pole vector slightly higher, just for this pose. So it needs to go slightly that way, like that, around there. So I'm just going to snap that key in, snaps, and then we're going to blend in. So I'm cheating the pose just to make it a little bit more connected there. Now there is a little bit of like, there's something about the connection here. Yeah, I just feel like it can slide in a little bit more. It needs to come up and settle in. So I'm gonna bring the hand up, comes up, add some weight, and then cushions in. There you go, it just feels a little bit more natural. And again, the elbow's gonna have to blend in a little bit there. There you go. Right. So now we got up to that point. So now we've done 30 frames today. This is part of refining. Let's hit save. What kind of styles would you like to see on the stream? Would you like to see something crazy cartoony? Or would you like to see something more like this, but maybe some broader acting? I'm curious. Or it could just be a class. To be honest, I'm thinking of doing more concise, specific streams just on a specific technique, rather than just doing entire shots, because it can be quite tedious sometimes. And there's just a long process. So I think maybe just doing something a bit more specific in one education might be something a bit more informative for you guys. Sweet. Is there any particular subject you guys would like me to cover? So I want to get a little bit more of like an inhale here. When he says wouldn't be, it feels like he's inhaling. So here he like inhales slightly. Can you see there? Wouldn't. So as I say were, there's a slight inhale on the body, and that's what I'm blocking in here. But I don't think it's reading enough yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a bigger change. So I'm going to have the body come up slightly more. And then I want to counter with the upper chest slightly, so we get a bit more of a curling feeling. In there. So I actually need to go the opposite, so it needs to come around here, the other side of the curve, to curl, crunch in. So you're feeling a little bit of compression there now. And then I want to get a bit of scaling. Do we have a breathe control? Breathe chest. Oh yeah. This is what I usually do in a polished stage, but this is a specific beat. So I kind of want to flesh this out. You want to see an action shot and to see my process. Sure. Yeah, I could maybe think of something. I guess what we could do, we could either do, how do you think I could do this? We could either do a poll where we give a type of shot, and like it could be, say, action, acting, or if we've just established you want to see something action, and then we could do either a poll to see what style I do it in, like give you some options and you vote on it, or we just do a random like lottery thing and we'll see what style and then I have to adapt to it. Like there's two different ways we could play with that. So you have to let me know. So got a little bit of breathing going on there. So just in this beat, I want to ease into some breathing. So just cushioning in. So we've got a bit of inhaling going on there now. And I want to involve the shoulders in there a little earlier. So getting that connection now. And then on the neck and the head, I think it's coming in a bit early. On this key, I want to favorite out. And ease in here. So we got the little breathing part there. Now, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a new different adjustment for the hand because I'm not happy with how it changes now. So I'm just grabbing all the poles here and everything from here to here. I'm going to blend back to what I initially had, which is that key. And I'm going to create a new adjustment. So I just want to get a bit more of a clenching feeling. So the hand's going to come up. Trying to find a pose that also feels fairly appealing. I'm going to have to tweak some of the posing, I think. And then a bit of connection in the elbow. Just something in there. Just feels a little bit more natural, I think. And then he's going to clench his fist. So I'm going to create a new pose here. So the thumb's going to come around. It's going to clench into the finger there. Index needs to come in. Unfortunately, we don't have any control for the joints here in the hand, so we can't spread so much. We have a control here which kind of does all of them together in unison, so we could always use a bit of that, but it's not quite the same thing as having the complete freedom. And I'd like to get a little bit more tension in these two fingers. So it feels sort of like compressing in. For some reason, when I'm doing this, it feels like the meme of that kid where he feels like he's threatening the guy, you know, the really angry one. He's like, and he's got his fist to the camera. When I'm doing that pose, that's just how it feels right now. Somewhere in here. So now I'm going to take all of these and I'm just going to tweak machine all of it to favor into that key. And then I'm going to change the breakdown so that we get a bit more of a connection in there. It comes around. And then on the finger, when you clench a finger, as we close our hand, it tends to lead from the pinky coming in. So I want to make sure that as I'm doing these keys, the pinky is going to lead the action. Same here, lead, lead. I'm just changing the timing on my tweet machine. Favor, favor, favor. And these are all tied in now. Just so we get a little bit of roll off. I do need to favor this finger in slightly more, just so we get the connection on the thumb. So, and then I'm going to grab all of the animation in the arm again and make sure that all of these keys from this part onwards now stay in that pose until it needs to move again. So it's just tweening for now, but I'm going to go into that a bit later. So he inhales here, and then turns with the head. I think we could maybe get a beat in there slightly earlier. So I'm going to grab the head and lean this in. I think the neck would inhale up at this point. And then it comes down into the position here. So again, I'm just looking at the body on the root and it's kind of sharp, it snaps into this. So you have the little hang time here, but I think it moves into this too late. So I'm just retiming that slightly. There's some shoulder stuff in here which we need to change. Just so it blends a bit more naturally. Like that. And then here, this is the biggest part. So the head needs to lead slightly earlier, as do the eyes. And then I think in here we can blend the body through a bit more, as with the neck. So I'm actually going to look in the curves here for this part because this is quite specific. So he comes around in here. Want to get a bit more overshoot on the neck. Then he punches up. I'm just having a look. See what my reference does. There's a little anticipation down in here. And then it bursts up. So in here, I'm just going to create a new little hang time in the spacing. And then it cushions in here. So it has a nice little hang time on the up of the neck now. And then we need to check out the Z as well. So in here, it kind of cushions in quite a lot, and I think we want to make it a little bit more linear, just so it never finishes settling completely. Here, it needs to be a bigger spacing. Similarly in here. And then here, again, he's come around. And I think this needs to overshoot a little bit. Maybe we can get the shark fin feeling here. So it punches up, hits. I think it needs a little bit of cushion. And then it can settle back in. Ooh. And then it settles back there. So I'm going to go back in. I'm just going to tweak these keys up so that we settle back from the overshoot. Like that. Feels pretty good. And then I need to check the head animation. So there's a beat in here where he says wouldn't be funny at all. And I've articulated it a little bit more in my animation from the reference. What's my favorite animated movie? Oh, dude, you asked the hard ones. That's the classic. Man. Do I have to pick one? That's very hard. 3. Okay. I was gonna say if I had to pick one, it'd be Ratatouille. I love that film on both an artistic level and on a like emotional level and a relatability level. So Ratatouille is number 1. Hey Veronica, that's all good. Like, welcome for joining. Yeah, I hope you're good. 3 animated movies. If we're going for Maya's Got My Soul and that's all good. We're talking about favorite 3 animated movies. Animation Bob just dropped this bomb on me. Man. So yeah, Ratatouille. I think one that always gets me again on an emotional level is Your Name, Kimi no Nawa, which is a Japanese animation, for those who haven't seen it, about 2 teenagers who are at school, and through some miraculous occurrence of events, they end up swapping bodies, and they end up essentially falling in love by the end of the story. This is not like massive spoilers. It's kind of, you get the vibe. But yeah, it's crazy. Like, it's so good in terms of like execution, storytelling, how it's paced, cinematography. Even the animation's pretty good. Voice acting is great. Yeah, I love that movie. It's like top tier. And then the other one. Oh man. Mate, yo, what's a hard question? I really like Akira. Coincidentally, I'm wearing a t-shirt from it now. Yeah, I do really like Akira. That was massively groundbreaking for its time. But I guess maybe Spirited Away. I do love that movie a lot. There's so many good ones out there. Like, there's so many that speak to me on an emotional level. Like, I really like Disney's Tarzan. That's a massive one for me growing up. But I'm just thinking of like, what is pure masterpiece? And so, yeah, if I had to pick 3 right now, off the top of my head, I mean, like, Iron Giant's in there as well. It's fucking phenomenal. Off the top of my head right now, I'm just gonna say from what really, like, just feels flawless for what it's trying to say, I'm gonna say Ratatouille, Kimi no Nawa, and Spirited Away. Is that cool? There's so many things that I'd want to feature in there. Obviously, like, you know, people know I love Spider-Verse. But yeah, it's hard, man. It's very hard. Those are my like timeless ones. Hey Aaron, what advice would you give to me on this? I've been doing some animation exercise practices, and I would like to build a portfolio, but there are some times where I really don't want to animate and just go outside and play video games. I like this. Any advice on how not to burn myself out? That is actually a very good question, and my advice to everyone when it comes to that is health comes first. Don't overwork yourself. You know, you've got time. If you know, we need time to relax. I play video games nearly on a daily basis, and it's my way of relaxing. Some people are like, but you're still in front of a computer, you know? But I'm like, yeah, but it's a different mentality. I don't know. I'm kind of switching off when I'm playing video games. I'm kind of like, my brain's on recharge mode. So like, there are definitely, if you feel like you need a break, man, take a break. There's no rushing these things. But I think if you want to really monetize how you're doing things, then I would say that you should at least try and give yourself a goal. So like, for example, when I was doing that Spider-Verse fan project, I said, okay, I want to have this done by the end of the year. That gave me 3 months to do it. And I was still playing video games in that time. I was still going outside. I was still socializing. But whenever I came home and I felt like I had the mental capacity to put an hour's work in, I put the hour's work in. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. Give yourself a time limit. Give yourself a goal. Planning helps a lot. So literally when I was doing that test, when I was on the undergrounds coming back from work, I was writing down notes about how I wanted to plan things. I've even got notes in there for other projects that I still am yet to finish. And it's been like 2 years. So that's what I mean. Like, I have personal projects which I've had on the side for like 2 years. And there's some of them, like there's one which I'm like, there's, how many shots are there? 8 shots? And I've animated because I don't like them anymore. But I have animated like, how much of it? Out of the 8 of those shots, I'd say I've finaled like 3 of them. And then I've like gone fairly into refined mode on the others. But I've just stopped working on it. Even though I was so close to finishing animation at the time, I needed a break. I was burning out. So I just stopped. And I haven't touched it since until I feel like I'm really in a good place to continue. Like, just don't overwork yourself, you know. I didn't think it would be so hard. Yeah, it's hard, man. For anyone who doesn't know me, and you shouldn't assume this about animators and people like filmmakers, but some people, you know, after a day's work, the last thing they want to see is a movie. They just want to go outside or, you know, do something else. But I am genuinely one of those people who are like addicted to artwork and film. And I watch the same ones on repeat, like constantly. So like, it's hard for me to pick favorite movies because I have so many. Yeah, Mitchells and the Machines is awesome. I do like that movie. I think on a creative level, it's awesome. There are definitely some funny gags in there. At the same time, maybe it's, in my opinion, it's ever so slightly overhyped. Like, don't get me wrong, I think it's a great movie. It is very good. I watched it with my partner, we were cracking up. I just don't think it's as groundbreaking in terms of storytelling and as a movie as a whole as people make it out to be. That's just my personal opinion. I was super excited whilst watching it. I was like, oh, this is awesome. And then I had the hype, and then I sat back and watched it, looked at it as a movie, and I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. I have seen Vivo. Also great. Again, that's one where I felt like, for me, Act 1 it came out strong. It finished up pretty strong. The journey part felt more targeted at children for me. Like with the whole Cookie Girl Scouts and like the journey that they go on, it felt a little bit more typical animation formulaic in that sense to me. That's just, again, these are all my opinions, so don't hate me for saying these things. I am also quite a critical person. Just gonna tuck that. I'm trying to work as I'm thinking about these things, so you guys aren't like bored of just staring at a black screen. But yeah, I did like Vivo a lot. Animation, again, beautiful. Everything that comes out of Sony, and this is a non-biased opinion because I had this opinion before I worked here. Like, and I'm sure most people agree. Like, Sony do make beautiful work. So like, I had very little to say in terms of creatively. I loved the whole I bounced to the beat of my own drum sequence in Vivo. That was awesome. Still to this day, my partner like jams out to it. Yeah, it's very cool. But yeah, I think in terms of storytelling, there were some really nice things to say, but it wasn't anything like that really hit home for me. Wish Dragon was also one of those ones which I thought was surprisingly great. Like, I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. I saw the trailer. I knew it was going to be well animated. But in terms of, like, they managed to take the, like, Aladdin-esque kind of movie and put a spin on its head kind of thing, which I liked. It wasn't as conventional as I expected it to be. So in that sense, I thought it was really nice. And yeah, it was super expressive. It was a lot of fun, like you mentioned. Yeah, it was really great. If I had to pick between Wish Dragon and Vivo as what my preference is, that's a hard one. I would lean towards Wish Dragon. But I mean, I love the songs in Vivo, but I think just as a movie, I think I leant more towards Wish Dragon. And again, with Mitchells and the Machines and Wish Dragon, they're pretty on par with each other. They're pretty different in ways. It's like, oh, man, I don't know. They're both great and they say different things. I think Mitchells and the Machines is more unique, even in its storytelling and what it was trying to say. So in that regard, I do actually like Mitchell's a lot in that sense. Mitchells and the Machines blows them away. When you have kids, it hits home. Yeah, exactly. I don't even have kids, and I felt like it hit home more for me. I don't know. I guess I could try to put myself in the place of a father, and there was something about it that definitely spoke to me a little bit more than Wish Dragon. Even though I've been in like long distance relationships or people who like, you know, you disconnect over time, that kind of thing. So like, I don't know. I just thought it was a bit more powerful, but they're both great. I have opinions about Soul and I could talk about those opinions for a while. Yeah, me too. Me too. I think, again, Soul was one of those ones that was slightly overhyped. I was the same with Inside Out, though, honestly. Don't get me wrong. I love Pete Docter. He's a great storyteller. But I will say that I felt both those movies were fairly overhyped. The whole thing where they were saying, like, with Inside Out, they're like, wow, this is such an original idea. And I was like, really? Emotions as characters? I'm pretty sure I've had this before. Like, so many student projects do that kind of thing. So, like, I don't know, it didn't feel that original to me. In here, I just want to bump up the spacing on the X of the head here. But yeah, with Soul, it had, I think it did say some great things. At the same time, I felt like it had a lot of opportunity to say something more. And I know they have to appeal to a wide range of audience, but for me, it started off on a high note, and then as soon as they got to like the afterlife kind of area with 22, I expected it to go down a route that was different. I didn't like that they kind of. I wanted it to almost take a spin on trying to convince 22, or like seeing things a bit more from 22's perspective, but it kind of ended up with the whole cat thing. It ended up Joe just being like a puppet, like a controlling puppet for 22, being like, oh, but you gotta take me here now because I need to do this thing because I've got my only one chance to be here. And I felt like it took too long. Like, I know what they were trying to do. They were trying to keep the arc based around Joe, but I felt like what could have been a stronger message, because there's a beat, there's a sequence where they have 22 where she's just like sitting there and she's appreciating the life around her and she's like, wow, this place is beautiful. And I wanted more of that. I wanted to see life more from the perspective of 22 and less like about Joe. And I wanted Joe to eventually be learning from 22 more, and I think it took too long. They spent too long on Joe guiding 22 through his life and having that realization of 22 actually wanting to live there. I think that's what it was for me. Yeah, the barbershop scene was perfect. I love that scene because that was one of those like little pieces of life that's very specific, and it feels very like authentic to the culture. Like, I love that stuff. I wanted to see more of that, but from the perspective of 22 and how she's digesting the world and how she processes it, and eventually come up with an arc and something by the end of it that felt more grounded around her. Because they set it up really nicely where she's like, oh, I don't want to live in this world. And then I just didn't feel like they spent enough time pushing the appreciation for life from her perspective. And it was more about Joe just wanting to fulfill his dream, only to realize that it's not what we should appreciate in life, and, you know, things don't always work out the way they should do, which is essentially the message. But I just felt like they didn't push that enough from that perspective, if that makes any sense. The thing that got me about Soul was jarring was the contrast and how realistic it was at some points to the real world, and it would go very not realistic. Yeah, there was that too. From an aesthetic point of view, that too. Like, it was quite jarring. I do agree with that. Funny. Ooh. And then we can drag the head slightly here. Sorry, I'm trying to get it back into the animation. And then we're going to cushion that in. So I'm trying to get a little textures of overlap in the head. Do you see there? Funny at all. And I think that can continue the head coming down, and it'll just be a little bit more of a gradual linear ease in. When I say linear, it's never completely linear, but it takes longer to settle in. But that feels pretty good to me. Me personally, I don't like it when they kill a character in an animated movie, just because I've told it different. Just because have it told differently, kids are watching this. Not that they don't know that people die, they do take it like it's real. Yeah, I mean, Finding Nemo's a pretty big culprit for that, where they killed off the mother in the first 5 minutes and then had a very disabled child. But like, it's very hard hitting. But I actually really like that movie for being so bold. And I don't like, it's very sad at the beginning of the movie, but I don't think anyone was too emotionally invested in the characters at that point. Whereas I feel like even like Up was way harder hitting, because there are scenes before where they develop an emotional connection between between Carl and Ellie, and then once you're just invested and be like, wow, this Ellie girl's really cute. Oh wow, they have this entire life together. Gone. And that was heart wrenching. So like, you're just about investing in them. If anything, you're probably more invested in Ellie and her charm at that point than you were on Carl. And so that was then really hard to digest. Yeah, Up destroys people. Whereas I feel like with Finding Nemo, there's a charm and a little, like, you could see the dynamic in the relationship between Marlin and Coral. But at the same time, you weren't so invested in them that when she died, you were like, oh man, like, I am dying now. And I feel like that was a good balance for me. Finding Nemo was a good balance where like you weren't so invested that you just wanted to kill yourself at the end of it. Or like, and it still had very emotional weights to it. So I actually really liked that balance for me personally. I'm a massive fan of Finding Nemo. Sorry, I'm just reading through all the comments. I guess one thing too is that at the end everything did work out for Joe, which I get. They kind of have to not kill him because family film, but it kind of went against the point of the film of how everything works out, and getting everything you want isn't how life works out a lot of the time. Yeah, it's true. I almost feel like Joe should have like. Did he end up sacrificing himself, or did he end up living? I can't remember. I don't know now. But yes, he did get to resurrect. Maybe there was a way that he didn't... Maybe he didn't end up returning back to life, but he was still able to guide 22 through life somehow. Maybe that would have been interesting. So there's still this like connection in there. Almost like how Inside Out has people inside her heads which have impacts on what happens in the real world, but joy and the emotions are separated in sequences from Riley. Maybe that was something they had a problem with, was that disconnect. I don't know. They're two different ways of storytelling. Over the whole start, how to wind up after Lion King, the father dies. Yeah, Lion King's fucking horrible too. That's so like, right? So much investment there. Yeah, it's still one of the most beloved movies, but it does make kids cry. It does make kids cry. Oh, you had a nice... See, that's kind of good though. If you had to talk with your son about it after, then it kind of opens up those conversations, and it's in a way that a child can digest, because it hasn't happened to them yet, but it also prepares them for when eventually that may happen in real life. So like, it's hard. My kid cried when Peter Parker died in the Avengers. Oh no, I'm sure it's like Spider-Man's most like kid's favorite character. Yeah, it's tough, man. Like, they come back though. Yeah, I agree, but in Lion King it was done without this shock. He feels like he fell asleep. I don't know, in Up and Vivo it was like bang. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Like Mufasa was still there in spirit for Simba. So that definitely helped soften the blow as well. Like, you see his shadow and everything. But, yeah. You just, yeah. Oh, that's true. You do see the body. Sorry, I just like how that's phrased. You see the body. Yeah, it's true. Like, it's very hard hitting. But it's also quite poetic in a way. I don't know. It's hard hitting, but I like those movies. Like, one day I would like to see... I would like to see more... Not when I say dark, I just mean adult themed. In the sense that they're not afraid to say things that are real. And I would like to direct something someday, be it a short film or even a full-length feature if I get to that experience where I feel confident enough and people have confidence in me. But like, I don't just see myself as an animator. I like to consider myself as an aspiring filmmaker. So I study a lot of just film in general, not just animation. But this is the craft that I love doing at the same time. But in terms of filmmaking, I have ideas that I want to potentially contribute to one day, and they have fairly hard-hitting themes, but obviously you tell it in a way that's going to be digestible for all audiences, hopefully. But yeah, there are important things that I feel like need to be said. And I'm not one who's going to refrain from saying those things in the way I tell a story. But again, I don't know if I'd have the bravery to like see the corpse of a beloved character. Like, you have to be super confident in your storytelling ability to do that. But yeah, we'll see. Like, I think there are important things that have, like, the themes that I want to talk about have been mentioned before, but they haven't been told in the way I want to tell it. And I think it has a very different way of seeing something, which I'm excited to tell, if that makes sense. The same way, like, so I love movies, like, if you guys have seen them, they're super, like, mind-bending in the way you process them. But there's films like, have you guys ever seen Perfect Blue? I'm curious if anyone here has seen Perfect Blue. So I want to overshoot the Y here a bit more in here. I think it needs to hit a bit harder. You haven't seen Perfect Blue. Okay, definitely watch that. It's gonna fuck with your brain. It's really good though. So it's a Japanese animation. I'll give you the premise. It's pretty dark, I will say that. It's a very dark movie, but it talks about like mental illness in a really interesting and abstract way, but still enough for you to follow it, if that makes sense. And it leaves you, it's like Inception in the sense that it leaves you thinking. You're like, oh, but what about this bit and that bit? And it's super interpretive, and I really love that. But it's quite a famous movie, but it's like, it's like Iron Giant in the sense that it's like, those who know about it think it's fucking amazing, but not many people know about it. But essentially, it's about a young girl who's a singer, dancing pop star, and she becomes an actress, and she has a big fan group and everything, and she's very beloved. And then she takes this change path in her career, and they essentially, the media take advantage of her, and she ends up acting out a scene which is very traumatic, which is the heaviest part of the movie. But it's not real, it's acted. Like, even in the movie, it's not a real situation that happens, it's all acting for a TV show that she's doing, but it's still very hard hitting. And it essentially, that has some form of PTSD on her. Yeah, it's pretty dark, but then there's an extra level of it. Like, essentially, she has a stalker as well who's following her, and there's people who find out about her life, about random things like, oh, she was picking up a fork today and she dropped it by accident, but she found it kind of funny. And there's like a vlog about her life, and she's like, how do people know about these things? But there's plot twists that I won't say. Like, I've already given enough of the movie away to get you invested, but definitely watch it. If you feel like you can swallow a fairly big pill in terms of the themes of the movie, in terms of what it does to your brain, it's freaking amazing. I'll type it in the chat. It's called Perfect Blue. I think it was made in the 80s. It's like late 80s, early 90s. It's freaking amazing. I only literally watched it. My tattoo artist recommended it to me like a year ago. And there's also another one he recommended called Neon Demon, which is about fashion It's like about the fashion industry and how, again, how they like, it's pretty twisted and they exploit you and that kind of thing. That was also very, and it has a very over caricatured ending, which is also very twisted and dark. We were talking about dark movies when I was getting my tattoo done. And yeah, he mentioned Perfect Blue as well. And I eventually got around to watching it. The first time I watched it, it took me, I didn't expect to swallow that hard of a pill. And so I turned it off and I was like, okay, I'm not mentally in the right place to watch this right now. But then I watched it like 3 weeks ago and I was like, man, this is such a freaking good movie. To the point where I was watching analysis videos of how the story was told and how it is broken down. And I even had to get some people to explain it for me because there's parts of it I'm like, man, this is really cool, but like, what the hell just happened? But it does make sense. Like, there's not much left to your interpretation. But yeah, it's a great movie. Went off on a slight bit of a tangent there, but I find it interesting. I like talking about movies and filmmaking and that kind of stuff. So I'm just looking at the y-axis. Hopefully you guys have still been following me as I rant on, but you're actually looking at the animation. But can you see how I've just started to track little accents in the arcs of the head now? So if we actually look at the pin, because I'm pretty satisfied with this. I'm going to save this before I accidentally crash. If you are curious, another good one which I mentioned, it's not as much of a masterpiece in my opinion, but Neon Demon was the other one my tattoo artist recommended, which is a cool movie. But yeah, that one's pretty interesting too. It has a similar tone to like Drive, you know, the Ryan Gosling's Drive. Love Nicholas Winding Firth. Yeah, like it has, yeah, it's awesome, right? Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, so it has like a similar tone to Drive. Neon Demon does. Oh, nice! I haven't seen Bronson. That's something I'm gonna check out. I'll write that down. Thank you, Bronson. See, so many great movies out there that I still haven't seen. Sorry, it's just tracking the arcs in this scene. Bronson. I'll just write that down so I can watch. I'll watch a trailer later. Thanks for that. Where is my arc tracker? Does it track the arc? Oh, there you go. It is working. Style 22, 24 frames. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Just wanted to show you that I'm tracking the head. So he's still got the funny in there. Can you see how it punches into funny? And then has the little curl around. Wouldn't be funny at all. I do feel like I want to tone down the X in here. Is Tom Hardy's best performance? Ooh. I am intrigued. Yeah, thanks for the recommendation, man. I appreciate it. So I just want to scale back that arc. It's all there, I just want to reduce it slightly. There we go. And I think in here, I want to blend some of this back a little bit. So I'm just going to smooth these curves. And then this one too. Somewhere in here. And then I think I'm pretty happy. Cool. Select the... not weight paints. Misclicks. Vertex. Oh god, now I'm showing the joints too. Polygons. Cool. We're back. Now I'm just going to look at the Z rotation on the head. Do I want to lead with the head going around here is the question. See what I do my reference. My reference, I drag it. Yeah, I think that feels like the natural thing to do. So in here, I think I'm already starting to drag the head. No, I'm not. I'm doing the opposite. Haha. So in here, I want to ease out. Drag still. Drag. And then in here, again, we're dragging the head here. And then we get a cushion in. Somewhere between those two, I think. Somewhere around there. Cool. Let's pan that back and see how it feels. Wouldn't be funny at all. So I think there's something about the head drag there. I think I'm dragging the head too much in the X. So I want to reduce this curve slightly at this point. And then just have a bit more of a linear in the X settling back. Yeah, that feels better. Cool. So I'm going to play the entire thing and just see. I'm mostly looking at the spine, the neck, and the head and seeing how things feel. I am going to be making changes, but I just want to make notes for myself. And then probably what I'll do for you guys is I'm probably, after I've made my notes, I'll call it a night. And then the next part, I'll have already hopefully refined some of the stuff. And then we can just focus on the face in the next session, the next live stream. Cool, let's do a play blast. We are in version 8. Play blast. E8. Play blast. I'm trying to think of other interesting movies that you guys may have not seen. If you haven't seen Perfect Blue, I mean, if you're thinking, like, in terms of those kind of twisters, one that's a lot more mainstream and was made even more mainstream because of the remake that they made, but it's Ghost in the Shell. If you haven't seen Ghost in the Shell, I recommend that one. That's a great one. But the original, just to make that clear. Trying to think of others that are really cool. It's hard to think off the top of my head now. I'm trying to think of ones that aren't going to be as well known. I mean, I'm not one that's seen loads of like indie movies, to be honest. I don't know. I'll come back with a list for you guys. Cool. Let's see what we got.
Be funny if we both got it wrong, eh? If I did the good thing and you did the bad one.
No. Wouldn't be funny at all.
Be funny if we both got it wrong.
So, one thing that's generally I'm noticing is I'm losing some of that punch that I had before because I'm starting to add too much settles and arcs in places. And then ironically, so right now, the thing that I'm noticing, which I feel like I've got the wrong way around when I'm looking at this, is the parts where things feel sharp and snappy should have more cushion, and the things that currently have a lot of cushioning should feel more snappy. So they're minor changes. It doesn't take me too long to adjust those things, but it's something I'm noticing. So if we have a look again.
Got it wrong, eh? If I did the good thing and you...
So in there, when he has that take in here, this feels quite sharp. And I think this could have a little bit more easing in, just subtle keep alive in there.
And you did the bad one.
And the same here. Up to this point, and then it all holds in here, and it feels like there's a lot of dead frames. I feel like this could have a bit more cushioning. And just having some moving hold in there. This one's okay. I like this one. I like that action there. I think it could have a little bit of keep alive in the root. And then in here, I think in here, I can hold this for longer. I'm easing out too much here. I think there may have just been a mistake, to be honest, that little part before. That one feels okay. Maybe a little bit punchier. Yeah, I think on the neck, that could feel a little bit punchier.
No.
So up to this point, I like this part all in here, but then on the no, I think the head and the neck feel over articulated. On the no, it feels like there's too much of an arc going through.
No.
A little bit. And so I'm gonna reduce that down. And I kind of like this. I think it could be a little sharper, so I'll probably take out some of the keys. The timing on it could feel a little faster, I think, and hold for a bit longer. So I'll do that as well.
Wouldn't be.
And then I like that part there, the wouldn't be.
Wouldn't be funny at all.
And then on all.
Funny at all.
On the tool bit, I think it could be less articulated in the arcs. I think it's too archy in there.
Funny at all.
It feels too animation-y. So I'm going to reduce some of that back and just keep it a little bit more sharp and intentional.
Wouldn't be funny at all.
But yeah, I think those are my notes. Shouldn't take me long to address those. So I'll do that off stream, and then our next stream, which will probably be either next Wednesday or Thursday, we can crack on with some face stuff, and it should be a little bit more exciting for guys. But yeah, thanks for sticking around, those that did, and I'm hoping you've had a good one. This will all be uploaded to YouTube shortly. In the meantime, yeah, have a great rest of your week, and I'll speak to you soon.